Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
All right, back in the Detroit is Different podcast studios, and I am here, as I often use the term, big homies. But this time these are like real big homies. So like certain big homies you meet after you become an adult, and then they have like a view of who you are and what you do. I had no control over one of these people. It's like they were like babysitting me before I even knew, I guess, who I was outside of God knowing who I was. One of my biggest cousins is in full effect, and then another one of my big cousins who is definitely, as I always say, when I talk about people think like, man, you always talking about this and talking about that when it comes to black people in history. It's like, if you think I have a lot to say, you have obviously not met my cousin. Right. I have only the tip of the iceberg of commentary on white supremacy, the indoctrination of it, social injustice, and just the historical precedent of many of the challenges and trauma that we face in the black community. And she can give so much more context to this, but just like me, people originally did not know her for speaking on social theories like this. People knew her as a creative. But now most of you guys probably refer to this woman as Reverend Mayowa. Now it's Dr.
Mama Mayowa.
Dr. Mama Mayowa. Reverend Doctor.
To you, that is. Right.
You know, it's like those old school people be like, you better put doctor in front of Martin Luther King. He went to school for that.
That's right.
She went to school for that. See, as both of these women are educators, and in some of the toughest forms of education. My cousin Vicki, and most people know her as Miss Green from Cass Tech.
Yeah.
And people always be like, Miss Green is your cousin?
Right.
Like, yes.
Famous.
Yes. She is famous. We knew of Miss Green as someone that read so much, but also appreciated such urban novels as like every Donald Goines novel.
Oh my God, everyone. Yes.
But they are here in full effect. How are both of you?
Good.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Doing great. Glad to be here.
And my cousin was like, you should have told me this is going to be video. She's fresh out of working out.
Right.
So let me give that context right now, because workout life, health is wealth.
Yes.
Both of them running 5Ks and everything.
That's walking.
Running. I'm going to say running. We speaking it into existence.
I ain't running nothing but my mouth.
I'm running. But along with that, both teachers at Cass Tech, the big CT. And we're going to give a lot of historical context. Many people know them from a lot of different things, but we're going to start with my big homie, my cousin. She knows this is not being the Detroit is Different podcast studios, how like most people have come over here and know this as. This was my grandma's bedroom.
Yes, it was.
Mother Dear's bedroom.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Mother Dear, and let's talk about growing up in Detroit for you and your Detroit story.
Okay.
Which is kind of similar to my Detroit story, but let's talk about your memory with it. What are some of your first memories of this neighborhood growing up?
Oh my goodness. I remember, I thought about this when I came down the street earlier. I remember coming down this block, being in the back seat of the car, or mama driving, more than likely coming over for some family event, dinner or something like that. And the trees line both sides of the street, and they reached over and they touched in the middle and kind of intertwined, so that when the sun came through, it was like sparkly looking coming down the street. And this street to me was a beautiful, magical street. Every lot had a house and every house had a family, and it was a beautiful, beautiful block. Growing up, I so look forward to coming over here. Lots of kids, lots of young people, lots of things to do. It was just a great place to be. I'm still amazed when I look around the house now. I remember it being like 40 and 50 of us for family dinner, and I'm thinking, how?
Right.
Where do we fit? There's one bathroom. Like, who does that now? Everybody has 2 and 3 bathrooms in the home, but that's one of my earliest memories.
And like I always say to Dara, your relationship with our grandmother, Mother Dear, was so much different as she was still working.
Yes.
Whereas we had that grandma relationship, the retired grandma relationship, kind of my as I generally have my big homies on here, but my little homie, Mayowa's youngest Khalifa,
Yes.
had that relationship with her grandmas too. It's like the retired grandma is a different grandma than the working grandma.
Absolutely.
So what was that like? Just building that relationship, seeing Mother Dear working, like really you were like one of the few to really experience that.
I did, Kari. And first of all, I want to say you have great questions already. I'm like extra chill and flashing back. I remember Mother Dear. I rode with her. I was a road dog. We went lots of places together. So even when she was working, often I was working with her. I remember going to the church. I also remember her going to people's homes with her when she was a social worker and the secretary of the church and the music minister of the church. And she always had 11 million things to do. And so I remember making lots of those trips with her, going from place to place and making things happen. That was a busy woman. She always had things to do. And then I also remember, which of course, Kari, you don't, but Mother Dear's mother was alive and well. And her bedroom was the room that's next door to where we are right now. It was Mama Rulak's room. And I remember her being alive, and she lived in the cottage that was in the back. Now the people would think it was a garage, but it used to be a house. And coming over on Saturday mornings, and my mom and Mother Dear would go to the Eastern Market and get stuff for the week for everybody. And I would sit with Mama Rulak and keep her company while they did that. And I just remember it was always, always, always something to do. She always had something. Even when she retired, though, she had something to do because my son used to work with her in the yard out here all the time. And planting flowers and pulling weeds and all that kind of stuff. So I just remember a lady that stayed really, really, really busy.
Okay, and when you talk about just being busy in that relationship from a whole nother scope, I'm going to come to asking Mayowa some questions of you were so fit as Mayowa is the wife of your brother.
Yes. Yes.
And at this point in time, for years now, one does not come without the other. As our family still calls them Leon and Lisa.
Right.
Some of them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like Mayowa and Lumumba. So the coming into the family, meeting Mother Dear, and this was really the introduction to the family. And you've told this story, and really Lumumba told the story on his podcast.
Oh yeah, I gotta listen to his version. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Listen to his version. It's like revisionist history. It's
Right.
like it's like who was where, arbitration. What was it like coming over here? What do you remember
Oh,
of
my
the home and Mother Dear and just the feel?
Yes. Okay. So, you know that you're special when you've been seeing someone and talking and things are going well, and they invite you to their grandmother's church. You know that, oh, this is special.
And wait, let
So-
me give a little context to my grandma's church. And this kind of goes to the social work too.
Right.
My grandma was old school. For a long time, black people were Presbyterian. So it was like, okay, I'm not too Catholic, and I'm not still old school Baptist.
Right.
But I'm going to land on Presbyterian. And she worked with a lot of the Presbyterian, Methodist, and Catholic ministries as a social worker. And I hear all of these stories, like I just hear them from my mom and Aunt Joyce, and you
Right.
probably witnessed this, where she would work with a lot of the families finding resources for the families on the east side.
Yes.
Generally, it would be people that believed in giving back through the word. So things from clothing to artistry to pianos and organs, and she would find these resources, get them over to families working right under the parish-based system I'm going real old school for people like
Right.
to like do some studying and you'll find it out. And she worked as one of those people right along with a lot of different ministers and priests and just people working within it. But along with that, like old school Presbyterian church,
Right.
meaning like the youngest person in the choir was like
1,000.
had they were receiving AARP magazines for a while.
Yes.
So it was like old school church. It wasn't your usual, but you did come to that journey. So now you can pick up with the coming to the old school church. It's like
Right. So this was Christ Presbyterian, I believe, and Mother Dear was the minister of music. And it was Mother's Day. So it's interesting because the backstory is, as Lumumba and I were walking in, at that time, Leon and Lisa, as we were walking into the church, Mary was elbowing Vicki and pointing, and I wondered what that was about. And of course, later I found I had come to the house to pick up a heating pad for Lumumba. He had hurt his back, and Mary was on the phone with Vicki. That's another sister. And when I came to the door, she said, "Oh no, this is just one of his friends. It's not his girlfriend," because I was light skinned and flat chested, and that wasn't his type. So then when I'm coming to Mother Dear's church for Mother's Day, Mary is surprised, like, "Oh, wait a minute, this the girlfriend." So we go to church. It was great. And then we went to a brunch, and all of us, Big Ma, and I fell in love with Big Ma from the first time I saw her because her neck was filled with ankhs and crosses and kente cloth. I'm like, this is my kind of sister right here. And Mother Dear, we're in her home and we're honoring her right now. Mother Dear had two gentlemen at the end of the table vying to pay for her children and grandchildren's and great-grandchildren's brunch. They were like, "Oh no, Mary, I'll take care of that. No, Mary, I'm gonna buy that." And I was looking at Lumumba. I was like, "Your grandma is a player."
hilarious.
She had these two guys, debating on who was gonna pay. We had a great time, and so that was nice. And Devin. I always tease Devin. That's when Devin fell in love with me. He just sat across the table and stared, and we had a great time. And it was
What
later.
was he, like 3?
He was 3. Yep, 3 and 4. And later that day, I was scheduled to come to the house. Now, I had my own daughter, and this would be her first time meeting the family because we had decided we were going to be serious. And I had already made up in my mind that the first person that looked at her sideways or looked me up and down, we was out. I don't care how much I like him. And we walked into Mother Dear's home, this home right here, and that was 25 years ago. Mother Dear embraced Nzinga, Big Ma, everybody was like, "Oh, here's Devin, here's Donna, here's," Kaylin was a baby. They ran outside and played, and everything was smooth. Well, of course, later, it took 20 or so years later to get Mother Dear's history, that while she was a Presbyterian and she was involved with ministry and she was involved with helping people, she was also very human. And she understood that life has many dynamics. And I've never felt uncomfortable, and I never felt, my daughter has never, she testified this at various family funerals, she never felt as an outsider. So they embraced us. And really, that's how Lumumba got me. Because it's one thing to have a relationship with a man, but I partner with his family. And it was this house on Clement Street that let me know that I was involved with a family whom I grew to love. And that's why we say we're sisters.
Right.
People still try to figure it out when Vicki say that's my sister, because we really embrace each other as family. And it starts right here on Clement Street in Detroit.
Yes.
Well, in the world of, like I say, a lot of things is like, I love pop culture. It's like Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid. You inherited not only a mate and a husband, but a production assistant for all types of creative things. And guess who was the first person, I think, to put my big cousin Lumumba, who like really is like, people's like, how did you want to do all this? Lumumba made all this stuff cool, because it's like you go down in the basement on Marlowe, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And like what I have set up is like inklings of like a lot of stuff that he did,
Right.
but the person to put him through the ringer when it comes to production is right to your right.
Yeah.
And
I forget about that sometimes. Lumumba tells the story and reminds people. I really kind of forget about it.
yes, and you challenged even and Lumumba's always been a very strong perfectionist, like
Yes.
to a T. Like he doesn't even like doing stuff unless it's perfect.
Right.
He doesn't like
I'm not
flying at the
fooling
whim.
with
Yeah, it's like it's not ready. You'll just wait.
Right.
We're gonna work. We're gonna get the right people, and I think a lot of that has to do with my big cousin Vicki, and she launched in true creativity of our family. Like she was like, okay, I was in a beauty pageant. I can do this better, and it should be all black.
Right.
And like unprecedented, like no, when you talk about like no, you know, like no sponsor, no,
Right.
no,
Just
no,
do it.
like it was no cotillion ball, giving you like the green light, no Divine Nine group
No.
supporting it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You built a beauty pageant where you had your family, especially your brother, become the coordinator of a lot of production. And Miss Black Star Pageant, which launched and gave so much confidence to so many young black women
Yes.
over time, as I think about it, and it hits me more as I interact with so many grown women, young women, but especially young women, when we think about confidence and what their idea what beauty is and what that means
Right.
and how creative they were. And I always say Lumumba had a tough job, because if anybody has seen like even any of those like high school productions where it's like a needle drop, like, okay, so the first 15 seconds you're gonna play this song, and the next 15 seconds I'm gonna change the dance move, I'm gonna do this, then the lights go out. It's like, hey man, you got like 3 minutes.
Right.
But Lumumba made it happen.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about Miss Black Star Pageant. What came about? What's the story? I got Lumumba's side, but what's your side?
Okay, so I was 18, like almost unbelievable there. And I had been in a few pageants, and there were so many different things that I felt could have been better about the ones that I had been in. And I was telling my mom about it one day. She says, well, if you know so much, then you do your own. I went, okay.
Classic Big Mom. Classic.
See, exactly. If you know so much to do your own, I said, you know what? I can do that. I can figure it out. I can make this happen. And so I decided that I was going to make it happen. And for teenagers in Detroit, 14 to 18 years old, and understand this is before Facebook, before Twitter, before social media. I would print flyers and posters, and I went into every high school in Detroit. At the time, it was 30 of them. This was before charters, and when
this
all
is
of them
like-
were open.
And you were like fresh out of high school too. You
Fresh
know
out
how
of high school.
intimidating it is for like an 18-year-old to stand in front of other 18-year-olds and say,
Hey.
hey, anything.
Right, like,
doing
hey,
this beauty
you
pageant.
can do this. You can do this. I handed out flyers and put up posters and took 3 days and went to every school and recruited. But the bottom line is what we've always known in our family is you use your resources, and you use the people who are close to you, the people you know, who you trust, and that's the people that you get to do things with you and for you. And if I was 18, that means Lumumba was 13.
Right.
Exactly. Right, because I'm 5 years older than him. So he was 13 years old. And the first year he was the DJ for, because he was always messing around with it and doing things with it. But, he was the DJ for our rehearsals.
Okay.
And somebody else actually did the show that very first year. Well, the next year, early on, I believe I learned that person was going to be available. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to look for somebody else. I'm not going to pay anybody else. It doesn't make any sense. I said, you're going to do it. He said, what? I said, you're going to do it. He said, but I don't. I said, but you're going to do it. But I don't know what to do. You're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out. You're going to do it. You're going to do the music. You're going to do all of it. You're going to be responsible for everything as it relates to sound. You do it, and you're going to figure out how to make sure that it goes right and it goes well. And he said, okay. It was like he wasn't given a choice. I just wouldn't give him a choice. And there was a guy who used to work at Wayne State. His name was Wayne.
Yeah.
Forget
At
that.
Wayne State.
Wayne State. I'm like, this is Wayne. Right. At Wayne State, who was in charge of the lights. And he taught Lumumba a lot of stuff. And the two of them worked together. And between the two of them, they did all the lights and sound. And they did an absolutely fantastic job. And that's what kind of gave him his push. And we did that for 11 years before I decided that it was enough, that I wanted to stop doing it. It wasn't, the way that I did it made it very successful but not very profitable, and so it wasn't a job. And because I knew I wanted to impact teenagers' lives in some way, I'm like, I got to do this a different way. And so I figured out after that what it was that I needed to do. and I stopped doing it. But we went out on top. We never stopped because it was not doing well. It was doing well the last year that we did it.
And you have many people that have gone on from Miss Black Star to do professional. You had Kenya
Yes.
Moore, Antonia, who was Miss Michigan.
Yes.
I mean, just name a few.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, no,
My
no,
interview,
big-
my interview
Right.
skills.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's-
Lots
See,
of people.
as I say, my big homie
Right.
Mayowa, she is. She's like, it's like Mario and Super Mario.
No, that's true. And it's not just the people who quotes did big things. I've even had a lot of people tell me, young ladies tell me after that, and even to today, some that find me
Right.
on Facebook or whatever, they say that really helped me develop my speaking ability, to not have fear when I was talking to people, to be strong when I'm interviewing. And so I believe I got the scholarship that I got based on the skills that I got there, that I had confidence in myself based on the things that I learned in the pageant. So people that went on to other great pageants and well-known people, but also just instilling that confidence in young ladies to know that they deserve to be heard. They can stand in front of people and do their thing.
And both of you definitely have been successful in this, but this has always been phenomenal to me. As the older I get, just knowing the way you went about it, it's almost like you didn't even realize that failure was an option, A. And
Right.
B, how accountable you held everyone that was involved in this production, including the contestants.
Absolutely,
Your sister Mary, I remember some of this, like sitting in some of those rehearsals, because my mom would drop us off. We'd just be sitting in the back playing with toys and stuff. And Mary would be like, look, you got to sell this is real grassroots. The every contestant had to sell a certain amount of ads in the book.
Yeah.
Business card ads.
Yes.
And Mary was definitely not going to accept people don't want to buy.
Right.
So these are teenagers, basically another teenager saying like, look, you can go out there
Because
and
Mary's
you can make it
8
happen.
years younger than you.
Exactly. Yep. That's right.
So explain a little bit about just the blind faith that you knew that the contestants would have that ability, and that you were giving them something, because I'm sure it could have been another pageant they could have gone to and just paid all the money themselves, like had their parents pay and just did it that way.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't want it to be cost prohibitive for young ladies, particularly. Well, most of all of them came from Detroit, but not all of them. We had some far away as Benton Harbor and stuff who would come in, but it was initially anyway, it was a $20 entrance fee, which obviously is absolutely nothing, but that was just to basically show faith and to get us started every year so that we have a place to rehearse. And they had to sell advertisements. They got a few free tickets, and then they had to sell other tickets. But advertisements came from businesses, but they also came from family members. You can find people who will support you when you're doing what's right. And that was what I would always tell them. If you're doing what's right, you will find people that will support you.
Right.
You ask everybody, including and especially, because my spiel to them was, you ask that where you spend your money all the time, that's who you ask. You go to that corner store and you spend your $1 or $2, every other day, that's the person they have a business card. Right, that cleaners that your family uses, that grocery store that you always go to, your church family, your neighbors, people will support you when you are doing what's right, and that's how you need to incorporate that in what you say to people. I'm doing what's right, and I need your help.
Right.
I'm not asking for bail money. I'm right. I'm asking you to support something positive, and you figure out how to say that and how to present that to your family members, your friends, the places where you do business, and people will believe you and support you. That's how I got people to support the pageant itself, because I had to go to Wayne State University, because we had it at McGregor Memorial Auditorium every year, and we got it at a great discount. I had to find places for us to have rehearsals, and we couldn't afford to spend a lot of money on that either. I had to find a printer that was going to work with us and give us good deals. I did the typesetting myself, and again, this is before computers. I was doing all this by hand to save money for it. So I did all of that myself.
Explain a little bit of what that is for everybody. To everybody knowing what that is. It's like they're wondering like what is this?
Right.
Basically, it's like laying out. Well, break it down.
Yes. No. Yeah. That's. It's there used to be an art supply store. It's I don't know what's there. Well, it's some little flower bed or something right now, right on the corner of Warren and Woodward. there used to be a Blix, I think it was called, or somebody, an art supply place, and they actually had sheets of like lettering, and you would have to cut the sheets out with like an X-Acto blade, the letters, like if I wanted to spell out somebody's name, I'd have to lay it one letter at a time. So I had this blue grid cardboard, and every ad that somebody, they would just write it out by hand. So they'd write out by hand, good luck, Stacy, love mom and dad. I would have to then cut out each one of the letters of that individually and place it on this board and center it and all that kind of stuff. Again, I said this is before computers where you could do anything like this. No computers, as a matter of fact. And yeah, it took me a long time. It took me hours and hours and hours a day, because what I did was I went to the printer with everything camera ready, is what it was called, and that was to save money. If I turned all that stuff over to a printer, it would have cost me hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars more. So I did everything that I could do, and everything that my family could do, or that I could teach them how to do, we did.
And including that, the people at the door. My
Yes.
dad was a tabulator.
Yes.
My dad even talks about that. He was like, yeah, I would show Vicki the tabulation. And then that made me say, okay, she probably can end up working with me in some other business.
Exactly, yes. So your dad, as an accountant, I said, hey, he's an accountant. He can do this, and he's good with computers. He has set up a database to be able to tabulate the scores.
Which also goes against most ethics of most of these contests that people think, where it's just like, just give it to her.
Right,
No.
right. Yeah, no, we didn't play
And
that.
they had to have a talent.
They had to have a talent. They had
Speaking
ability, the interviews, the swimsuit, which was for poise more than anything. I always stressed that it was not a beauty pageant. That it was based on grace and confidence and ability to present oneself very well. And that's in talent, or even in walking in the evening gown, just being graceful, being lovely, more so than the idea of being beautiful. But again, everybody in the family did. Mother dear worked the door.
Right.
My grandmother worked the door, taking tickets. No matter, everybody had a job. I don't care how young or how old, everybody had a job in the family. My mom, I think, worked the door with Mother dear, I believe. I had dressing room supervisors with my cousins.
I know my mom set up a lot of the
your mom was the flowers.
and-
Yeah, your
Right,
mom was
the
our
florist.
florist.
Yeah.
Your mom was our florist. She did the bouquets and everything for. Yeah, we pretty much did everything. Now, only a few places did we contract somebody else to do it. We didn't have anybody in the family who knew how to make trophies, so we used
Buy
Spike Lawrence for that, right?
Yeah, trust me, if my cousin would have kept doing that, she'd have been trophy making
Okay.
in about 2 more years.
We'd have figured that out, because that was kind of a big expense. But yeah, so it's I guess that's pretty much it.
Now, as we talk about this, and I definitely want to like green light. I've talked to Lamont, but we got to figure out how to like a documentary. I just want to see some of those old pageant books and just in some of the video. We got to figure that out. But as you look at today, and you are a teacher at Cass Tech, and you're aware, and you're in social media too, and just the imagery of young women and the stress that goes on with that, and you look back and you think of that. What do you think just the value of learning the gracefulness, learning the value of what beauty is, means to a young woman in that teenage development?
That's interesting, because I think the dynamic is definitely changed over the years, and grace is not a word that I think you even hear teenagers use. That is not something that I think is in the forefront of their mind. That it's something that's a part of their lives now. The idea of being graceful, the idea of being a lady, or being a young lady, at the risk of sounding like I'm some old lady.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because but that's the reality of it. Social media and music have changed the way I could not have imagined where we be now, like with the level of I don't know. Again, at the risk of sounding like an old lady, I don't want to be prudish or sound prudish, and I know that things change, and so I'm with that. But some things, I think they border on sad, like the desperate, like cry for attention, or the things that some young ladies go through that they believe that they need to do, or they need to be, or they need to have, rather than other avenues like education and talent.
Or even natural, or even, fortunately, there's a shift now. There's a movement back towards natural. But you
That I
think
agree
about
with.
all the, because we have several books at the house. There was people weren't wearing weaves. People weren't wearing wigs. They were wearing their natural hair. So they may have been getting a press and curl. They may have been changing how to manage the hair. But pretty much it was, you came as you were, and then you worked on making that your best self, putting your best self forward. And so you didn't have, like I said, the weave and things that, I think that was we started teaching in 98 and 99. I think it was in public school that got me used to that, coming from Aisha Shule, where we promoted natural hair and so forth. So, it's been like 20 years of this now. It's very different from when you did it.
It is. It is. It's different.
And on the flip side of that, when I talk about creativity, you're in a whole nother realm when we think about young women and their development, young men too, but especially like just in the same realm of, you spent your life performing as a dancer.
Yes.
And that's a realm of, and dance was definitely in Miss Black Star, but choreography, the performance of it, the imagery and building the confidence of young women, and like it's such a movement. Like even the youth program I'm working with kids now, they're doing like a whole dance routine. It's like dancing has come back as a phenomenon now. God knows who's making these dances to every song. I don't even know what it is. It's like yeah, I'm about to do the arm sing.
Right.
Like, what is the arm sling?
Right.
So like, what was that like for you, being a dancer at a young age? And what did that mean to you to get on a stage and perform through dance?
Wow. Well, first I have to give credit to two people. Miss Akeem was the English teacher at Bobia Middle School. She taught English during the day, and after school she taught dance, and she was very strict. And she would talk to us about standing up straight and using, grammar correctly, right? And so she was molding us. And we couldn't put, back then you used to want to put a comb in your hair. Remember that? You just stick the comb in your hair. Like, Ms. Akeem was like, let me catch a comb in your hair and see what happened, right? She would, and so she kind of got me into the transformation part, right? Like sitting up straight, and then everyone calls you stuck up, and it's like, I'm really cool people, but Ms. Akeem told me to sit up straight. And then Festival for the Performing Arts with Kim Weston, and Clifford Fierce had just come back from a tour with Catherine Dunham, and you had Sundiata Omausi, you had Ron Milner, and I literally, that's why it's so funny that Lumumba was 13. While this was years apart, at 13, I showed up to Northwest Activity Center. I signed in every day. I danced all day. I took acting classes. I took voice classes. I was in love. I had found my tribe, and I didn't know that everyone was getting paid except me. I was too young, and I hadn't gone through the summer work process, right? When Kim Weston found out, who is Lisa Waterman? This child signs in every day, and she's not getting paid. And that's when, and she took me under her wings, because it's like, who does that? I was in love. Dance saved my life. I probably had ADD. I probably have, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to move, and that's how I take in information. And learning to dance and doing Dunham dance in particular, which was very rooted in African aesthetic, set my life on fire. And it saved me. It kept me from doing a whole lot of things that was going on in my neighborhood that I could have got involved in that I didn't. So I was a kid at middle school that stayed after for dance rehearsal. So all those fights that I used to, people used to see me in school, used to be like 3 o'clock. So I avoided a lot of that because I was in dance practice. Same thing, Festival for the Performing Arts. Then I went to Mumford and I met Miss Rowland and I told her. So dance really shaped my life. And as an adult, people tried to make me feel that dance was frivolous. That's just something you do. And so I spent my 20s doing everything else but that. And so I was so glad that when I came to myself after an illness and I decided I would never do anything that wasn't right for me that I didn't want to do. Then when I went back to Marygrove College, I majored in dance. And I was in my 30s and I was in there talking about, please, yes, honey, because I'm going to be me. And it has served me well. So dance informs how I learn. So even we were honor students at Marygrove College. I had an A in literature. I had an A in math. Well, I was struggling in math, but I still got an A. I had an A in science. And the literature teacher, remember Vicki, because Vicki was an English major, and her teacher was like, "Oh, yes, 2 sisters. Oh, yeah. And you're gonna major in English?" I was like, "No, I'm a dance major." She looked at me, and she said, "Well, surely your minor is English." I said, "Well, no, it's humanities because I want to go to Africa." Girl, she walked away from me in the middle of my sentence. She was like, all that brilliance going to waste, and it's like, no, this is how I'm brilliant.
Exactly.
And that's why I touch those kids that a lot of people can't reach, because it's not if you're brilliant, it's how you're brilliant.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that I know,
that.
all the stuff that I do, all the lectures that I can teach on a myriad of subjects, it came from me as a dancer investigating. So I investigate with my body.
So in that early age, just being on stage.
Oh my God.
What do you remember, like your first performance? Were you nervous? Were you not nervous? Were you like just eager to get on stage?
Yes, let me tell you. I was nervous. And there was this part that's going to be in my book where I was about to dance at the Festival for the Arts. We used to have festivals downtown. And I was going to dance to Jennifer Holliday, and I'm telling you. And I was ready, right? I was standing, I was shaking, I was nervous. And somebody said, "What that white girl gonna do?" So that kind of hurt my feelings. I went out there and I danced so hard. The whole crowd went crazy. I won first place.
Wow.
When I would dance, I could be mad. I could have gotten in an argument. I could have, because I was real mouthy. But when I got on that stage, it was like heaven. And it still is. When I take Lisa McCall's dance class, it's like no matter what's going on in my life, I'm just I'm in another zone. And so I remember doing the Dunham dances with Clifford Fears. I was a principal dancer, and I would dance so hard, and I would be in such a zone that after the dance, I would have to lay out. That's why when the kids do that, at the school, when the kids do that, they be like, "Oh, Miss Reynolds, I said, "Don't worry about her. She all right." And so they're like, wondering why am I so calm, because that used to be me, right? I just gave it all on the dance floor, but it was reciprocal. Everything that I gave, it came back to me. That's how I feel.
Okay, so when we think about that, and then a more, knowing more of your family's background and their ties to the trade, and it's historic, but definitely way more business, not as creative. What was it like the first time you got to perform and your family got to see?
Oh, that's interesting, because they didn't really come a lot. It was almost like, yeah, that's something she does. And then I think finally they came to something, and it was like, oh no, she actually talented, because it was a business model, right? So the arts weren't really promoted, but neither was religion. My family, once they moved from Edworth to the Northwest Side, and I was born, they were like, well, we made it to the what's it called? We made it when the Jeffersons.
Moving on
we
up.
moved on up, right?
Yes.
And so I went to Vacation Bible School with a neighbor. And then I just fell in love with church. I loved everything about it. And it's probably, I'm not taking anything away from my religious rootedness, but it was probably the artistry of it, right? The singing, the shouting, which is dancing, right? The preaching, the cadence of black preachers, all of that just turned my light bulb went off. And so I would get up every Sunday and go around the corner and go to church with a neighbor. My parents didn't go to church. They weren't really into the arts. They didn't discourage me. They let me do it. But they were like, yeah, that's something she does. And then when they saw me, it was like, oh, she actually talented, So then they were supportive, or people would see my mother and say, oh, I saw your daughter on the scene. I was on the scene, or I was at a festival.
I didn't know you were on the scene.
Oh, I was on the scene.
Okay, wait. And let's wait. Time out. For people listening, as you know, I've interviewed Henry Tyler, but the great Nat Morris will soon be.
Yes,
will soon be on Detroit is Different,
right?
And RJ, but the scene. It's so funny. I'm telling the kids, like they're trying to choreograph like what they'll do to shoot and where things are. The scene was intense, especially when Henry Tyler would say, yeah, man, people would be standing outside for hours trying to make the cut. I'm like, for real?
For real. Yes.
He was like, for real. And people would just be fighting just to get basically like
Yes.
45 seconds on camera.
Yeah, the scene was the local version of Soul Train.
Yeah.
But it was local, and everybody knew everybody watched it, and everybody
watched
They
the
saw
scene.
you on there. They tell you this.
You
Hey,
was
that's what.
famous.
Hey, that gave Fast Freddy his break. Who's still
Right.
dancing
Yeah,
today?
he sure is.
Yes, Fast
He-
Freddy's still
he
dancing
sure is.
today. But
Yeah,
yeah,
good
that
old
game was
Fast
great.
Freddy.
They went to different schools. I remember they came to each school. There would be a Cooley Day and a Redford Day and a
Right.
Hemford Day and
Mumford
Mumford
Day,
Day
right.
and that they went to each one of the schools and whatever. But I didn't know you were on there. That's cool.
So like all of this kind of coming together. Let's talk a little bit about your family's background in business, because the ties, like what. I guess you can give some of the background.
Okay, so
where
my
your family? Where are they originally from?
Right.
How did they come up to Detroit?
Oh wow. Well, this is what I know, and my family watching may correct me. It's very few of us. There's very few Watermans left. So my grandfather and his wife was biracial. That's a word we use now. That was not a word used back then. So she was probably half enslaved African and half owner. I'm just, because my dad would have been 100 this year. So you got to think his parents were 120, 130. Actually 30. So my grandfather and his wife moved to Detroit, Michigan from Virginia. They had 4 children. Apparently one died young. So my dad was the youngest. Homer Sr. was the middle child, and Lee was the oldest. My grandfather was tall, dark, and handsome. Oh, that's my first love, because he lived with us as a child. He started Waterman and Sons Printing Company. So when he would deliver the papers or deliver the printing, people thought he was the delivery guy. And he was like, okay, cool, just make the check out to Waterman, right? But he was Waterman. His original name was Nobles. He changed it to Waterman once he moved to Michigan. What I understand is whatever business he had down south, the Ku Klux Klan burned it down, and then he moved up here. My father's mother died when he was young, but he was born in 1918 in Detroit, Michigan, in the Brewster Projects, the same time as Coleman Young. So they grew up together in that area. They were called the Brewster Old Timers. And because my parents had me very late in life, my siblings were adults, I used to go with them to the Brewster Old Timers functions at the Manugian Mansion with Coleman Young, and I would be the only kid there because my parents had kids at 45 and 37, and everybody else's kids were grown. So my dad grew up in the Brewster Projects. He worked in the printing company for a minute. He did Chrysler for about 5 minutes, and he realized that wasn't for him. He had a restaurant on Vinewood and Linwood, and until I was 5, and that's when the riots occurred, or the uprising, the rebellion, whichever side of history you're on. And we never went back. We went down the street that day, and it was on fire. And I remember a woman coming to the car, and she said, "Shug," that's what I call my dad, "Shug," or Buddy. "Shug, don't worry, we got it." They were protecting some of the black-owned businesses. But at some point, everything got out of hand, so even they were damaged. We never went back to the restaurant. He then got his real estate license and became a broker. Motown Realty was his business. He helped many families be the first black family on the block. Back then, that was called blockbusting. And I remember many arguments my parents would have. My dad would forfeit his commission to help a family have their down payment or the moving cost. And he was just a real cool, laid-back dude most of the time. I mean, he could pop off because he used to be a boxer. So he was a Joe Louis Brown bomber. I got pictures of him, in the silk robe and his shorts, He was, before my mother, he was a womanizer. He had several wives and other children. But by the time I was born, we were all one big happy family. But I didn't know they had different mamas and was born in the same year. I didn't know all that drama. But
Ghetto twins.
Yes.
Ghetto twins.
Ghetto twins.
And but my dad was a businessman. His father was a businessman. My uncles ran Waterman and Son Printing Company until my Uncle Homer died in I was pregnant with Khalifa 2000, probably about 2000, late 2000. And then his sons run it, which are Homer Jr. and Billy. And my cousin Billy, who was 81, recently passed away. So that Waterman and Son legacy is my family. Motown Realty. One brother became a lawyer and then a judge. And so 50th District Court is named after him. And his wife got into politics after being a doctor for 40 years, and she's now the mayor of Pontiac, which will be very interesting for my brother. But he was very much like my dad. I mean, very laid back, cool, but he did have a temper if he popped off. You know, he just didn't pop off with me, but I've seen it. But yeah, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. That's why, you know, when Lumumba decided he wanted to strike out on his own in '99, that was organic for me, because I grew up in a household where owning your own business is a part of what you do.
So with this vision, and we're giving the background, another thing that I do tip my hat to both of you all, and I've done it even in my own journey, but I saw you all do it first. Going to college when you're the oldest kid in the class and getting back in school. And it's a journey. Like, I run into people all the time that say, like, I don't know, I'm going to be the one person. And it's like, look, man, I think sometimes that may be the better journey, because you'll focus and you're going to pay attention. And Marygrove was one of the institutions that wrapped its arms around also Mary, my other cousin, and many other young black women that were like, okay, I'm about to get back in the school journey. I'm gonna balance out having my children. I'm gonna have my family. I'm gonna get this degree out. I'm still gonna be working. In that journey, balanced out at Marygrove. Right. What was your Marygrove journey like for both of you all in school? And I know it was like a big three, because it was like all three of y'all on campus. So it was like, it was a tornado.
Oh, yes, it was. Hey, let me tell you something, Kari. You probably don't know, like, maybe any of this story, to be honest with you. Okay, so I thought about this just a little earlier when we talked about, like, it's almost the audacity or the nerve to believe that you're going to do what it is that you set out to do. And I believe that, and audacity is often considered to be a negative connotatively, but no, we have to have it. It's like Barack Obama's, but the audacity of hope. Like, how dare you have hope? Well, that's what it was that we did. The same way in which I approached the pageant is the same way that I approached school. It was the same exact way. So let me tell you what happened. I'm gonna tell you how much I did not know. This is the honest goodness truth. So first of all, I had dropped out of high school. I got my GED when I was 18. I hadn't thought anything about school. Now I'm 30 something at the time, 32, 33. I had 2 kids, single mom, and I decided, look, I've been putting this off after I stopped the pageant for several years. I've been doing I had so many jobs. I got so many certificates. Man, I could shuffle them and deal them out, a bartender's license, data entry specialist. I got all kinds of certificates. And finally I said, look, what I've always wanted to do, what I've always needed to do, is to be impactful in the lives of teens. And what best way to do that than to be a high school teacher? So I decided I wanted to teach high school, and that ultimately I wanted to be the kind of teacher that I wish I had. And that was the goal that I set for myself, to become the kind of teacher I wish I had. I didn't know where I was going to teach. I didn't know how any of this was going to work. But let me tell you, I walked into Marygrove College one day because it was nearby. And I had seen it. It was really pretty.
Right.
My ex-boyfriend's family lived nearby there, and so we passed there a couple of times when I was a teenager, and he told me his mom was an adjunct professor in there, which I didn't even know what that meant. But I'm like, wow, that's really a cool looking place. So when I decided to go to college, I rolled up in Marygrove because it looked so cool and it looked so peaceful. When I drove onto the campus, I would always cut my radio down because I felt like that's something you should do. It's kind of a reverence for the beauty of the place. So anyway, I go to the office and I say, okay, well, I want to enroll. I didn't know that you didn't do this. I had no idea. Here we go, the audacity, right? So they said, you want to enroll? I'm like, yeah, I want to sign up and go to college. I'm so serious.
All of your certifications, as she was saying, like those commercials you see where you can be this and you can be that. It's like
that's
6
why I
weeks.
thought I was.
Like,
right.
Like, hey, let's get some school in here.
Hey, you sitting on the couch, you ain't doing that. Come on to Marygrove. I'm like, I never saw Marygrove in one of those commercials, but that's how I treated it. And so they sat me down with a counselor. Says, well, you have your GED. I said, don't have a high school diploma. They said, what about standardized testing scores, ACT, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I don't have any of that. I said, look, they said, go to WC3, go to community college, get good grades, and you come back and see us. I went to WC3. I signed up for 5 classes. I was working full time. I signed up for 5 classes or 4 classes, one of the two. I think maybe, I don't know, full load.
Full load, yeah.
I got 4 A's. I walked back into Marygrove the next semester and said, here you go. They were like, what are you like, look, that's what you told me to do. They didn't think I would, though.
Right.
Yes.
That's what you told me I had to do to go here. I want to go here. I didn't want to go to WC3. But I went there because you told me I had to do that first. I signed up. They say, okay, we got you. They signed me up and got me going. And I said, I can do this. I can be 30-something years old. I don't care. Which I didn't even know at the time that the average age of students at Marygrove was 33. I didn't even know that.
Right.
I just knew that was the
niche.
place. Yes, exactly. They had made that for themselves and should have stuck to it.
Should've
They
stuck
probably
to
would
it.
still have their undergraduate program. It's gone now. And I'm so mad at them about that because they
Right.
tried to change the dynamic and they shouldn't have done
Make
that.
it something
I
that's
mean,
gentrify it.
Marygrove and Wayne State
Right.
actually in 80s and 90s, like, but especially like the 90s at Marygrove and Wayne State, I remember specifically being like, okay, if you're going back to school, quote unquote,
Right.
like with that
Right.
label in your mind, I'm a kid, so they'd say like, if you're going back to school, you'll probably end up there.
Right,
It's not like the campus, like it's not a different world. It's
Exactly.
way more
Right,
like-
right, absolutely.
No, it's school.
It's no
Yes.
TV show because
Right.
it's boring.
No
It's people
sports
in school.
teams.
Right.
No
Yeah.
sports
Right.
teams. No, just school. Go to school.
Yeah, it's people
So-
in school going to class.
And it was
actually
quality,
studying.
quality
education. Yes, but not all that other stuff. And so I signed up one semester and I got going. My sister Mary said, well, shoot, if she can do it, I can do it.
Right.
And she had a GED too, same thing. She signed up the next semester, so then it was 2 of us. And then Mayowa said, well, shoot, if they can do it, I can do it. And she signed up the third
That's right.
semester. So
That's
it was
right.
each semester that one of us signed up. And by that third semester, all 3 of us were going there.
Yeah.
And people marveled, at us and, the fact that we had several children together. And we were interviewed once by the campus newspaper. And one of the quotes that they liked is that any one of us could start the day with 1 car and 2 kids and end the day with no car and 5 kids.
Right. Whoever had the most transportation or
Right.
the money to buy the food.
Right.
I mean, and Lumumba was very supportive.
Absolutely. And Big Mom,
Big
oh my
Mom.
goodness, everybody very supportive and very, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it would have been next to impossible. And I don't believe in impossible. It would have been next to impossible to do it without the support system that we had. But we also all believed beyond a shadow of any doubt that we could do it.
Right. And this is another part to the story because Vicki is absolutely right. She did it and Mary did it. And I was like, I always wanted to go back to college because I dropped out at Wayne State. I went and I didn't know the way you're supposed to drop out is go to the people and tell them you're dropping out. I just quit going,
So
right?
that means that
So I had
bill.
I had a bill and I had all F's right on my report card. So when I tried, I tried to enroll because, it's like, okay, I'm going to go too, right? I've always wanted to go. And Lumumba was like, yeah, you should go too, right? And so I applied and then the girl called my house to tell me because of what happened at Wayne State that I wasn't eligible. Lumumba picked up the phone and she said, hi, this is Carla from Marygrove College. She was like, oh my God, my wife is not here right now, but she is so excited about going back to college and I'm so happy for her. Okay, can I take a message? She could not give him the message. She said it made her choke up that he was so excited for me. She went to the nuns because it was still a Catholic school. She said, look, I have this candidate. Her transcript is messed up. What can we do? So they said, well, interview her and we'll see. So she called back. I talked to her. I said, look, I know what you got on paper don't look good, but that's not me. That's a piece of paper. Let me give you some letters of recommendation. I'm amazing. I'm working at Aisha Shoe later. She said, okay. She got something called the forgiveness clause. Now, I know they made this up, but they nuns, so they could make it up, right?
Yes, that's
It's
right.
their school.
Make up what they want.
And she said, and you're going to be on probation for your first semester, blah, blah, blah. I was like, bet, you won't regret it. First semester, 4.0, I was like, booyah, see you later. And so we always talked about that, like how she was so impressed with how Lumumba was excited for me. Because a lot of people go back to college and it's a struggle.
Right.
The people at home tell me, why you studying? Why you doing this?
Yes.
And they're like swimming upstream because
Yes.
it's already difficult enough,
Yes.
right?
And
but
we had classmates
we
like
had
that
everybody
who
pushing
fought
us
everybody.
like,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
And then that dynamic of, I mean, a couple things here. Being a wife, married to a black man, that definitely is not the narrative generally painted when we think about what that going back to school journey is, and just being in school, period. As the ideas, as much as you can speak to the challenges America's definitely had with racism, you speak just as much on sexism and the box that so many women are put into.
Yeah, well, Lumumba wasn't cut from that cloth.
He wasn't.
That's the thing. He saw his mom go back to school,
Right.
and become a nurse as a young. He was a young man. I want to say I was driving, because I remember dropping her off and picking her up a few times when she went to nursing school. So he was old enough, obviously, to
Right.
have
At least 10.
at least 10 years old, to have a good memory of her going back to school and making sure that she did well and graduated Phi Beta Kappa and all that kind of stuff, and became a nurse. And so that's what you do, and you support anybody who's trying to do well as far as educate themselves.
And I think that yes, it should be that, but
the self-confidence, Kari, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the self-confidence, it all goes back to Big Ma, and I'm going to try to hold myself together. His mother reared, she sound raised, I reared a man who had an amazing relationship with her, but she didn't need a husband, right? Some people raise their sons to be their second husband. She raised him to be independent and strong and self-confident. That's why I used to say, Big Ma, I love you so much. Because if nothing else, your kids believe in themselves, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's half the battle. That's half the battle in this society. And so when I put that against the backdrop of Lumumba went to Specs Howard, Mother Dear and Aunt Ruth, because he'd been doing the pageants since 13. He liked tinkering. He liked video. He liked radio. He wanted to do radio at Specs Howard. Mother Dear and Aunt Ruth paid for him to go to Specs Howard. And that's the extent of Lumumba's quote-unquote formal education. He takes professional developments all the time. He's always looking at something and learning the newest thing technology-wise. He was on a Mac computer before people knew what that was. That little square, funny-looking computer with the apple on the side. He is the smartest person I know. I mean, intellectually and otherwise, organizational-wise. But he also has such confidence in himself that he could support me getting my bachelor's and then my master's and now my doctorate. And it's like, it's the coolest thing ever. I can't even explain it. That it all goes back to his mom because of whatever he sees in me that he saw in his mom. That is like, no, this women should be supported and flourish in whatever way they can. And that's a part of your role as a partner and a mate and a husband.
And then during this time, and it's so funny when we talk about the back to school journey, a miracle out of this, like every time I interact with as I always talk about my little homie, it's like Khalifa, your daughter, she just reminds me so much of me. It's like scary sometimes because it's like, ow,
come get her.
It's like, ow, it's like, ow, Khalifa. You know, it's like, it's like you see the phenomenal nature of like everything that can be, and it's like, boy, oh boy, because if you go 100, it's so many opportunities, like, dope. You know, but like I was even having this discussion with her. Like sometimes I would go, I would assess like, and Khalifa's like, yep, that's exactly what I do. Like I would walk into class, I'd say, all right, who's the smartest kid? And it's like, as long as I stay with the pace of this person, I'm good. And I told Khalifa, I'm like, I know you do that. And I was like, when you go to college, I was like, you have to start preparing yourself because she's heading for a senior year. Beyond that, because college, like, it's like going to the pros almost, like that best student that you in high school, that's a whole nother level. You're going to end up in college with somebody that's like, oh man, this person actually read the chapter.
Yes.
So it's like a higher level, but along with that, in that journey, your son, during this at Marygrove, and Jabari's just a miracle.
Right.
To begin with, and him being back in school when we were talking, and I was like, yeah, it takes a different amount of patience, presence of mind, and just knocking it out and seeing it and not just like, I guess, the idea of like hanging out and wanting to be on campus and
Right.
you know getting your school I guess swag. They don't say gear anymore, but like your school swag and stuff. It's like, okay, it's good to have a T-shirt of your school and all of that stuff. But you know, it was the same thing. Like it was Kaylin. I was like, I didn't even know you graduated. And I called my mom. I was like, do you want to do? I'm like, the only reason I walk is because you want me to walk. I was like, you want me to walk? Because if not, I was like, I got my diploma, I packaged it up, gave it to her, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna keep knocking this whole thing out. But the idea of it and watching Jabari, and you all have set a precedent. Your daughter Donna, like so much schooling, and I'm sure that journey is gonna continue.
Oh, she's in her PhD program right now.
Yeah.
She just this weekend. She will be finishing her first semester of her PhD program. That's being paid for by her job.
And her master's was paid.
Her master's is paid for by her job too.
And continuing that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know Devin doesn't see it, but he's definitely, because like I always say, it's like, look, it's gonna be there. It just provides more opportunity.
Oh, he knows. He knows he can do it if he wants to. If he feels like he wants to or needs to, then he knows that he can. He knows he can. It's not a question. Like so many young people don't know that they can. They don't recognize it as an option. And the thing about it is, people say, well, is it mandatory? Is it necessary? Well, it depends on what it is that you want to do. Right. Is it mandatory? No. There's lots of people who have, great jobs and great careers and lives without it. But then depending on what it is that you want to do, it might be mandatory or it might be extremely helpful.
Right.
It's definitely, if you want to be a master chef, then going to the Cordon Bleu would, be a great thing. If you want to be, I think everybody that graduates from Juilliard's programs, find work in entertainment, right? Just by that mere fact. Now, a lot of people can find it without that, but with that, of course, that's
I think
and and even Howard Bozeman, he has a great story of having a job as in a soap opera, and how he challenged the script. Like the second day, and then the guy asked him at the table. He said, well, so what college did you go to? He said, Howard. And the next day they released him. Now, it was the best thing to happen to him. But he was like, that Howard education.
Not going to stay on that soap opera set that long.
And critique. But I wanted to go back to what Vicki was saying. She wanted to make a difference in the lives of teenagers. And after doing her student teaching and then getting an opportunity to go to CAS, and she's been there since she's, first started teaching, countless and hundreds of students' lives have been changed. And they would never believe if she said, oh, no, I dropped out of high school and got my GED and went to community college. I know, but it's like, it's so amazing because
sometimes they think, no.
They think she's making it up. But she gets to do her life's work and her joy. That was a gateway to do this because it didn't change who you. Vicki was already this person. Those were just more tools, right, and more credibility for who she already was.
Right.
To give her the opportunity to be a cast to do the work that she does.
Right.
Because just like I say, getting a certificate in something is one thing, but what I bring to the table in my person, my intellect, my intellectual property, my way of being, my sensibilities, my presence. Nobody can teach you that.
That's true. That's absolutely true. When people talk about teaching classroom management, like a lot of my classroom management is not anything it's not a bag of tricks.
No.
That I pulled out.
Want
it's
a
just
trick.
right. They want a trick. No, it's just me and me.
Right.
It's just I can't teach you to be me. It's like I don't know how to tell people how to manage a classroom. I'm there. They know they always size you up first. They know I care, no matter what grade I'm teaching, if it's 9th grade or senior AP or whatever. They know I care. They know I'm there for them. They know it right away, and that's enough. That's enough to command.
And you've prepared, and you have great lessons, and you keep them engaged, and you're funny. But she is the teacher you always wish you had.
Now let's in that, and that's why I kind of I want the people that are watching this is going to be a part of my like back to school, try this different stuff.
Okay.
I do. My take is always. You're exposed to different networks. For me, college put me in a position where it's like, okay, first off, I do it crystallizes that like, yeah, you can figure these systems out. you do have talent, you do have skill sets, but it also opens up networks and it provides access to certain opportunities that I'm not saying that you never would have gotten without it, but it levels the playing field where in a college classroom, you can be sitting next to, I don't know, like you can be sitting next to people that have touched a lot of different systems and get more of an intimate relationship over this course of a semester than you ever would have gotten if you were just like, bump into them at the diner or something. Like if you bump into them at a store, it's going to be hard to sit down and talk to, it's like,
like a study group. You get to know people.
Yeah.
You know what they're made of.
And this is the question that I have in reference to that. With so much going on and both of you still in DPS, and there are certain things that could be controlled and can't be controlled just for the student. I'm talking directly to the student right now, not the parent, not the other teachers, not the people that have a bunch of opinions but don't have kids in school, What would you tell that student about preparing for the school year where they should have their presence of mind so that they can truly get the value of the school year for themselves?
One of the things that I tell my seniors so often is that they don't do enough to advocate for themselves. So the older ones, I would say that they need to learn how to do that. Actually, even younger ones as well, but they need to pull people on board who will support them and stand up for them. There's so many things that happen, as far as I'm concerned, in schools and in education in general, particularly in the city of Detroit, that wouldn't happen other places just because of the dogmatic, insistence of the people in the children's lives that they are handled well and treated well and, given all the tools that they need and taken care of and so forth. We have people that do things in education and the way things are in education in Detroit that our kids accept, and maybe it's because nobody has told them that they don't have to. You know what I'm saying? They've never been told they don't have to. If I'm supposed to have 38 kids, first of all, that's too many.
Too many kids, right?
But if I'm supposed to have 38 kids and there's 45 kids in my classroom for a month or 2 months, and the kids don't even have chairs or they're sharing desks and whatnot, I'm telling you that wouldn't happen in other places because those kids would go home and they would tell their parents, and their parents would be all up at the school and calling the counselor and the principal, and everybody else would be called and held accountable for taking care of those children. Our children, I think, in Detroit are too used to, well, this is just the way it is. Do you know what I'm saying? And that they just kind of accept things and just kind of learn to deal with it, which makes you resilient, which makes you be able to handle lots of things. But by the same token, some of those things they shouldn't have to deal with.
Right.
If that's making sense to you. Overcrowded classrooms or not enough supplies or teachers, who don't care. We have them. Right. I couldn't be on the union, bless our union's heart, but I couldn't stand there with people who are not doing the job they're supposed to do. That's a whole nother story about whose fault that is. But that it goes back to advocacy. The kids need to learn how to advocate, how to stand up for themselves, and get people. And if it's not their parents, because so often parents are not prepared to do that either. It might have to be a grandparent. It might have to be an uncle, a godparent. It may need to be a neighbor. It needs to be somebody who can advocate for them, for the for the people who are not listening to the children about what it is that they need.
And same question for you, Mayowa. Okay. What value should a student be preparing for to embrace this school year?
Two things came to mind immediately. One is intrinsic. And the other one is sort of the Montessori motto is interest, right? Because Montessori, the childhood motto of Montessori is whatever young people have an interest in, they'll manipulate it and they'll advance at it. And what our goal and responsibility is to facilitate that learning because of their interest. I truly believe that, and that goes throughout life. But intrinsic learning means that you ask yourself the question, did you do your best? And you, if children don't get anything else, learning to do that means you've learned to be a learner.
Yes.
So when you ask yourself, was that my best? Because what we're training kids to do in some instances is they're doing the minimum. They're doing enough to get by. They're doing enough to shut you up. But they're not taking the time to say, was that my best? Because if it was your best, like Jabari struggled in math, and he would be up till 3 a.m. I told Miss Gibson, I said, Miss Gibson, you're killing my kid. He up till 3 a.m. And we found out he had a learning disability in math, but he was doing his best. And so if you're doing your best and it's still not an A, then you have a sense of pride and you can own that. But if you got a C and you were okay with that and you really didn't care, that's not going to fly in the real world. Because when you leave these protective walls with all these teachers that care about you and all these people that want to donate to the school, and then when you leave and come out into this real world, no one is going to care. You're the person that needs to care about your education, about what your interests are, about developing those interests, about meeting people that can take you to the next level. But you have to check in with you every day. Was that my best?
And see, that's self-advocacy. That falls right back to what that's under the umbrella of that.
That's the fear of, like I say, with my homie, because sometimes it's certain students like me and her that we can give half effort and get an A.
Right.
And we know we can get an A with half effort because we're assessing the rest of the classroom, which is a skill set, but it never really truly challenges you to get the most out of the situation. And when you talk about the real world, sometimes it's easier, like in hiring someone or working with someone, it's easier to work with someone that has the attitude of and presence of mind to give their full effort. And it's like, okay, I can work with this person and move them towards getting the aptitude than the person that lacklusterly is pulling out their cell phone, head down, attitude. It's like, I don't even like this energy. Even though I'm going to get a 7 out of this one person, I can turn this 7 to a 10. I got a 10 out of this one person, but the attitude and the energy gives complacency towards everybody else being around, even though you're doing it easy and you're giving what's needed. It's not delivering to that point where it's like you are feeding into everything. Now the attention needed, because that's what I generally think it is that every kid really just wants that attention because they're starved for that attention. So it's like, okay, I'm challenging you, and Vicki pointed out the love, and once they see that you care, and that's really honoring them with that attention. But
they have to buy in.
Okay. You already went right there.
Right.
You already went to where I was
buy
going without it.
And it's an interesting thing, because I even tell ninth graders this when I ask them, well, why are you here? And I'll ask them that early on. Well, I have to be here. I'm like, not really. Well, yes, I do. I have to be here. No. Why are you in school?
Yeah.
And I said what they realized in ninth grade is when they really realize this. And ninth grade is also the number one grade that they drop out in school. If you think of every grade, from kindergarten to 12th grade, ninth grade is the number one grade where they drop out. And ask them, why are you here? And they said, because I have to be, because my mama made me. Because, it very rarely, and like Mayowa mentioned the intrinsic, very rarely do they say, well, I want to learn. Right? And they say, I have to be here. But you have to point out to them they really don't. They kind of know it on one level, but they haven't internalized it.
Right.
And I said, you really don't have to be here. No, my mama would kill me. I said, no, you've decided that you're going to be in this space because you don't want to deal with the consequences of not being in this space. But at any second, that could change. You could say, I'll take the punishment. I'll risk getting caught, and I will skip, and I won't be here because I don't see why I'm here.
And I would say, Cass, and you were at DSA for years. Those are both schools that many a ninth graders start. And don't make it to 10th.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure you run into a lot of those students, probably more than you run into the students that actually graduate.
Listen,
probably every day, and they're like, man, I really wish.
Yep, I hear that all the time. And I always ask them, what could I have said differently? And what they always tell me is pretty much nothing. That it was, it was all in them. So that means there has to be something that starts maybe even before earlier than that time, where they figure out what it is that's valuable about school before somebody turned them off. And that's what I'm often fighting and dealing with, is that they've been turned off. And they're still here because, again, they feel they have to be in ninth grade. You know, my parent, I don't want to deal with, hearing her fuss or cuss or having him go off on me or whatever, or get a whooping or whatever it is that happens to them in the form of punishment. It's interesting because a lot of it is avoidance for punishment, not seeking reward, or
Right.
That's another another issue. But yeah, they our principal, Mr. Cohen, back in the day, used to have this saying. He's at ninth grade orientation. He'd tell everybody, he said, "Look to your left and look to your right. One of those people will not be at graduation, and realize this: somebody looked at you."
Right.
So that's the reality of it, because a lot of them, wouldn't make it past the ninth grade. But you're talking about a big giant issue in terms of what is it that causes them to be that way by the time they get there.
Right. And I think I want to tap into that.
Go ahead.
Someone's turned them off, because
Yes.
that's where I get the greatest joy. I mean, I love teaching. My advanced kids are fabulous. They're just like fabulous, Alvin Ailey. But my ninth graders, because if you say performing arts, you get Miss Reynolds, right? And I'm talking to you about leotards and ties, and they're looking at me like, "Oh, this lady is crazy. I'm not gonna do it." And my challenge always is to find that kid that does it because they're told. They like following the rules. They're totally like uncomfortable, apprehensive, not feeling it. And I say, give me till June. And in June, let's talk about it. You can say, "Miss Reynolds, that sucked. That was the most horrible class I've ever had. I'm never taking it again." Or you can say, "I was uncomfortable and I really didn't like it at first, but I've learned something new." And about December, I always get one, and the light clicks. And this year, I had a student and she was kind of quiet and reserved, and I gave her a solo for Kwanzaa. And baby, the kids looked, they were like, "Oh, she gave you," because I know what I'm doing. And she did it, and she was like, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm sure." We got to the concert, and she ran out on that stage by herself, and all the kids screamed, and I just saw her like, and she had confidence the rest of the year. She was interested in things, or she was engaged in a conversation. That is one of my greatest joys, is turning that light back on.
Yes.
You don't have to be a dancer, but you have to see that it was something you didn't know, you weren't sure, you didn't like it, but you tried it, and you found out it was good. And you still don't have to be a professional dancer, but you remember that moment, and it translates into other moments. And I think that's what happened with me, is what happened in dance, I translated it in everything else that I did. That's
great.
what I love about arts education and the arts in general, is that we can tap into another part of the brain. And once that light bulb comes on, you don't have to force them to come to school. They want to come. They're engaged.
Right.
Okay. Now with that, and we're gonna have to make this like an annual back to school discussion. So from now on, every August we'll talk and we'll kick it off with this.
Absolutely.
But we're gonna move into our classic Detroit is different questions.
Okay.
So the first one.
All right.
Very first car, year, make, and model, and what year did you get it?
You're not going to believe this, Kari. You don't know the answer to this question. I bought your daddy's 1967 Volkswagen Beetle from him
My pops.
for $200.
Oh man, that was my mama decision.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. He had this gold plate. Yes. That was your mama. He had this gold plate Volkswagen Beetle. That was made when I was 5. And it was stick shift. And Janella, your mama was not having it. And she was like, yeah, my niece needs a car. So you can sell her that car. And he's like, oh, okay. Because your dad's on like whatever whatever you say. Whatever she wants, whatever she says. And that was my first. That's right. Smart man. That was my first car. I bought it from your daddy.
Where was the first place you went when you got the ride?
Ooh, that I don't remember. I just remember it being cold and having to push start it sometimes. and looking at the ground when I was driving because it was rusty and had holes in the floorboards, and still loving that little car. I don't even remember like the first place.
I'm surprised you weren't picking up your brothers and sisters.
Well, they ended up riding with me a lot, right? But no, just.
But you don't remember the first ride. And how long did it last?
I want to say a couple of years.
Okay.
I want to say a couple of year and a half, maybe 2
Boy,
years.
they do not make cars like that anymore.
No.
No, because it was already old as dirt.
Right.
Already old as
Right.
dirt. The gas
Right.
needle didn't work. It always
Gas
said empty.
needle.
It always said empty. My mama had filled it up once and brought it home, but she forgot to tell me she filled it up. So we never knew how much gas was in it because it always said empty. So I went to put gas in it, and I gave the guy $5, and it took like 10 cents. And I had to go back and give me. He's like, "How you only take 10 cents?" I'm like, "Look, long story. Just give me my change."
Right.
That was
Yeah.
back in the day, boy.
Yes.
5 could take you far.
Yes. I'm like,
Five would take you far.
5 would have filled it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
you might.
Okay, me.
same question for you.
The year, I think it was 72. It was a Ford Pinto. It was orange. It was a stick shift. It was $300. And I lied and told my daddy I knew how to drive a stick shift when he drove me way out to get this car. And then we got there and he said, "You know how to drive a stick?" I was like, "Yeah." I did not know how to drive a stick.
Okay, how long did it take before you popped the clutch?
Right. Instantly. Let me tell you how you learn how to drive a stick. You drive that mug in Detroit and you get called out your name.
Yes.
You eventually figure out the rhythm and you not gonna be called a B word no more because you coming up the lodge and your clutch done pop and you rolling backwards down the ramp. You get cussed out enough. Yeah, you on Warren and the lodge. I'm going backwards. I got cussed out so many times. I learned how to drive that stick
That's
that
right.
day.
Yeah, it's like Cousin Billy saying, it's like, I drop a stick, ain't nobody gonna steal it. Nobody
That's
know how to
right,
drive this.
Right.
All right, so where was the first place you went? You remember?
I think I went to Wayne State.
Okay.
My first was from, and that's why, Wayne State. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, very next question. We'll go to you, Mayowa. You are the DJ at the Detroit Fireworks at Woodward and Jefferson. It just ended. What 3 songs are you playing?
I'm the DJ at Woodward and Jefferson for the fireworks. It just ended. I'm going to play Parliament Funkadelic.
Ooh, see.
Okay.
I'm going to play Celebration by Kool and the Gang, right?
Okay.
And then I'm going to end it with a slow jam. I'm going to play Devotion by Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, you went all funk. We know who you're married to.
See.
All funk. Mayowa, good picks. Good picks.
All right.
Vicki, what are yours?
First thing I thought of was Parliament, but then I thought, you know what? Why not just make it a Stevie Wonder?
Ooh,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay.
Anything from Songs in the Key of Life.
Okay,
Just-
you sounded like your mama's kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe since the fireworks just got off, maybe a few gospel songs. I don't know. Try to get folks in the, you get home. Go home, everybody.
home.
Go home.
And gospel nowadays is like so many interpretations because, like, my interpretation of gospel music was Mother Dear playing Mahalia Jackson. So that's a whole
right.
different.
Yeah. We get some Kurt Franklin there now. We can do that.
Yeah,
baby.
I was gonna say, but yeah, that's like new gospel.
Right.
It's like Mahalia is. It's like, oh, that sounds old school. Okay, all right. So I generally push people to the line with that one, but I'm gonna push you to the line with this one, Vicki.
Okay.
You can rename Woodward after one Detroiter. Who would it be and why?
Ooh, Detroiter. Rename Woodward. Yeah, because it was named after a racist judge.
John R. Woodward.
Yeah, after a racist judge a long time ago.
No, John R.
We've already named a few things after Detroiters that we. Let me think. Oh, dang, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think of like who's worthy of that, because Woodward, man, that's like serious. You got to be really especially deserving of such an honor. And right now, A few people's names are like popping into my head, but it shouldn't be any Motown star. You know what I'm saying? They got no. It shouldn't be any of those people. I wouldn't necessarily say it should be any politician. I'm trying to think of like Detroiters who what's the father's name who ran and started Focus Hope?
Father Cunningham?
Father Cunningham. Maybe Father Cunningham, but somebody like that. I would look into those. I would want some people. I would want somebody, not necessarily him, but somebody at least like him. Somebody who was dedicated to serving the people of the city of Detroit selflessly. That would be the criteria. So then I'd want to see, well, hey, everybody submit your names, and then I'll read the bios, and then go from there. If I was in charge of that process. So Father Cunningham was like one of the people I could think of, and there's a couple of nuns, who nobody would know. If I said who they were.
That's the thing. It could be somebody nobody knows.
Okay.
Because it's you name it.
All right. Then
okay.
I'll say Sister Barbara Johns Way.
All right.
Sister Dr. Barbara Johns, IHM, PhD. That was my girl. Yeah, and every Marygrove family would know her. She passed several years ago, but she was my favorite nun. Who has a favorite nun? I do. But she was a dynamic woman.
Sister Act.
And see, no, she was just a dynamic woman, smart, one of the smartest women I knew, and actually very unassuming. Like the first nun I met, I said, who had a PhD, right? I said, oh, Dr. such and such. And she said, no, call me sister. I'm like, oh, okay, sorry. Then the second nun I met, I said, oh, sister such. She said, oh, no, I'm Dr. such and such. Like, okay, I don't know now. Right. I thought there was a rule to this. So when you have a PhD and you're a nun, they're called a sister doctor, but then what? When I met Barbara Johns, I'm like, oh, she's one of them. She's a sister doctor. So I asked her, I said, well, which do you prefer? Because now I've learned, don't assume. And she said, look, I don't care what you call me. Just don't call me late for dinner. She gave that old corny joke.
Right.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. Right. But that titles did not matter to her. And she was absolutely brilliant. English professor at Marygrove, published author, smart. She didn't wear a habit, and she wore makeup, and she had jazzy haircuts and stuff. And somebody in class one day said they were surprised that she was a nun, because they found out at some point in the class, class had been going on for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then somebody mentioned it or something. They were like, "What? Wait, you're a nun? But you wear makeup and you got your hairs all cute." She said, "I didn't take a vow of ugliness." So
that's hilarious.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Just cool.
Yeah, she does sound like the character, but that's kind of like what I think. It's like the duality of Detroit's like that. Like it's like
that's what I'm
you
talking
wouldn't
about.
even know.
You would not know. And again, smart. A nun, you wouldn't know she was a nun. She had a PhD, you wouldn't know that. She loved Detroit, was dedicated to Detroit her whole life, and to Marygrove College. You wouldn't know like any of that if you necessarily met her. But probably one of the biggest boosters of the city and of the college, like ever. And was in charge of the newspaper and all that kind of stuff for the school and everything. So maybe somebody like her, but it would have to be somebody that falls under that. Like I said, not a politician, and definitely not somebody who's famous for, not. And again, it's nothing against the arts, but I mean, what about there are so many unsung heroes? I guess is the thing. People who are not known for really working like with the people in the city of Detroit, making things happen. That's it'd be somebody like that for me.
Okay.
Oh
Mayowa.
Lord,
here we go.
Same question. The first, I have to go with my first mind, because whenever I deviate from that, I'm wrong. So the first thing that came in my mind, because I didn't know I didn't know there was a question. When the question came out, Coleman Young Avenue. Bottom line, just flat out.
He gets the most votes.
He gets the most votes, but listening to my sister and analyzing it, I would think the second person I thought would be Harriet Tubman, because of the Underground Railroad and the significance of Detroit and the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the third would be Fannie Richards, who really started public education
Right.
in the city of Detroit. So those three.
Yes.
But Harriet, because of the Underground Railroad and putting that history back in people's mind, because like you said, Woodward was a judge, racist. Macomb was all of these were slave owners. Cass,
Louis
John R.
Cass.
Williams,
Yep.
all of these,
All of
because
them.
Jamon does a whole history of these streets,
Yes.
right? So if I'm gonna rename them, I'm gonna rename one Coleman Young Avenue and Harriet Tubman Way and Fannie Richards. And so people would have to say, well, who is that?
Right.
Right? And then they would know this rich history of freedom, of justice, and of doing things that other people benefited from, right? So Fannie
Yes.
Richards starts public school for black kids, right? And it's one of our biggest struggles to maintain since Brown versus Board, because people just don't want to go to school with us. But what she started still exists. And it's, you know what I'm saying? So to go back to that source and to lift her up would be something I would be interested in.
Oh, and people like Mama Imani.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, Mommy Money. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Those kinds of people.
Mhm,
Just
for
like
sure.
did what they could, the best they could for the people in the city of Detroit.
So this was phenomenal. It's good to know. Like, I got a couple of standard. I was like, I'm gonna end up with, like, I got Njia Kai, you guys.
wow.
It's a couple, like, I'm gonna always do interviews.
Okay.
All right.
Well, and that's kind of like into you guys' story too, because Butch Small, that's another one of my annuals now.
Oh wow.
And he talked a little bit about you guys meeting too.
Yep, that's
And
how
you know,
we met.
Butch is so funny. And then that was the other. I guess this is a guilty pleasure question. Lumumba was like, he was like, well, you know, I met my wife. I was like, I kept it all professional during the shoot and everything.
Right.
Did you feel the energy that he was liking you?
No.
Okay,
He
so
did.
he was 100%.
He was because let me tell you,
He
as a
didn't
woman,
start zooming in at you.
Nope. If he did it privately. As a woman in the industry, as a choreographer, as a director, as a dancer, that's one of my that would have turned me so off. He wouldn't have never gotten to first base. You know, and it was some other guys. If I only told at the dinner, that was like, "Yeah, you want some coffee?" And they was like, "Mother, you know,
Coffee.
right?" So they was trying.
break room.
But he and I
Good old
locked
break
in
room.
on the conversation about being an artist, being conscious, and not doing any more art that our grandmothers couldn't watch or our kids couldn't listen to. Because this was a rap video and it was a little raw. You know, y'all seen the video, y'all be like, "That's Mama Mayowa." I'm gonna deny it because I had on a wig. But
Hilarious.
but you know, we were shaking it and doing it, but we were like, no, we're at a point in our lives where we want to use our artistry to uplift black people and all people in general, but black people specifically. And we were both, so we locked in on that conversation, and then it was after that conversation that he asked, could he get to know me better? And had he done it any sooner, he wouldn't have made it.
So as they say, like the intelligence turned you on.
Oh man,
we hear
that's
about that a lot. I
yeah.
don't know if
No,
people
that's
are
real.
applying that ethic, because we hear that all the time. It's like I'm turned on intelligently.
Right.
It's like,
Well,
hey,
the pituitary
that is
gland
not-
is in the mind. It's
hey,
in the brain.
Well, I definitely from showing up at many of baby showers, I was like, I don't know if the intelligence was the first act. It's like, where is he coming? It's like, oh man. But that's good to know. And then that story is so funny. Like, I guess between all these different interviews, it's like I get to tie these stories together.
Right.
Because Butch has his own interpretation of like how you guys met. He was like, yeah, you know, they used to work and da 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 da. Because I was like, you know, they're my cousins. You know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I love that World I history.
Yes.
Detroit hip hop, music, dance, and we don't even just want to say a beauty pageant. Miss Black Star,
Miss Black Star.
Yep.
all of this. Northwest, I didn't even know Northwest Activity Center was doing that. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Northwest Activity Center seems to have been more active then than today with programming for
Yeah.
the community.
Festival for the Performing Arts. I did it for 7 years. We traveled all around the city, and I did it till I was 21 years old.
Wow. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Kai. This was very nice. I really enjoyed it.
Yep. Peace.
Peace.
All right.